Okay, in this video we're going to do a simple AV, but this time using DaVinci Resolve. So I'll start up DaVinci Resolve. It takes quite a while. It does take quite a while for DaVinci to start up, and it looks for a while it's not doing anything, but eventually you see things change and you get there. So I'll cut out a lot of that. So I've got various folders set up here, and I've already done this once, but I'm going to create a new project now, which is well, that was the editing of the pictures directly one. So create a simple AV with okay. Now, unless you've got the most speedy graphics card in the world, I'd make sure that you go in your playback and set it to quarter resolution. If you don't do that, you may find you get all sorts of sputtering and problems. So we want to go to the media clip, and I'm going to there are a number of gotchas with DaVinci Resolve, and one of them is that if you import still images and they are sequentially numbered, it will always think that you're trying, what you have is an animated clip, and it will run them together as a little movie, whereas what we want is actually to treat these things as individual frames. So when we come to import things, we have to make sure that it sees them as individual frames. So we have to basically make sure that it says show individual frames on there. If it doesn't, it will reduce the number of images because it will combine consecutive ones into little animations. So we want to make sure that we've got them all, and that way we end up with individual frames. And then the other thing we want to do is bring in the audio. So bring the audio in. So now we have everything in. Now we can go to the edit box. Once you've got them in here, you can start dragging them across. Now what you need to do before you start doing that is you want to go into the user settings, and you want to make sure that the duration is what you want each slide to be. Now I know these need to be about 6.5 seconds, so I've set it to that. So you can either pull them all in together, or if you understand the sequence you want them in, you can just drag them individually, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to pull them in and try and remember the order I want them in. So there we have our basic sequence, and we want to drag the audio in underneath it. Now I thought it's gone into 12 seconds. I'm not quite sure why I did that. I thought I set it to 6.5. Anyway, I'll select them all. I want to change the duration to 6. Drag over. You can actually close all the gaps with one operation, but I'll show you. Right, so now we have it pretty much the way we want it. You can zoom in and out get it how you want it to do it. So we might want to just play this and see how it looks. Okay, so that's working reasonably well. We don't have any transitions in here at the moment, but that doesn't matter. Now, I think what I'd quite like to do is make this one longer. I'm going to do a simple way because I can't remember how to do it. I'm going to drag this lot over. I'm just going to take this end. I'm going to make this one a little bit longer. Like that. It's a bit of a cheat. There is another way that will actually push them all along. I'm going to make this one a bit longer as well. So it's always good. Save your project when you get to a point where you're happy with that. I'll move that back to the beginning. So we've got our basic AV, and one of the things we want to do in here is I want to make sure that that music is normalized. So it's not too loud when it doesn't clip, and I can just do that in here because it has all the ability to do music editing as well as film editing. So we can from here do some tricks as we could in other things where we can set keyframes in here in a similar way you can to pictures directly, but these are slightly more sophisticated and slightly more difficult to manage in some ways. So if I click here, that will basically create a keyframe. So I want to pull the opacity down to 0. I drag that over to where I want things to start coming up, and that will automatically add another keyframe. So if we pull that up to 100, so now we should have an animation where that fades in, which is what we want. And then on the end, I'll do something a bit similar. I can trim this audio because it doesn't do anything there, and I can put my cursor here. It won't let me go past the audio. Very handy. Okay. So I don't need that there. So I'm going to add a keyframe here under opacity again, and I want it to go down to 0 there, so that will add a keyframe in there. So now let's try that. So we've got the same effects that we had before. Let's save that. I do have it set to autosave, which is useful anyway. So now the only thing we need to think about is if we want any transitions. So I quite like the cross dissolve transition, so I can position that so it happens between there. Control D. Well, in fact, I want to set the duration up here. It's not Control D on that. So I want it to be 2 seconds. So that will give me a look like this, which is the effect I'm after. So while that's selected, I can copy it. Copy. Paste. So I didn't have it selected properly. So I can now duplicate that all the way down. So it's a bit more tedious than pictures to exit, but it is actually a lot more powerful as well. So you don't get anything for nothing. So that's pretty much the way we want it. So the only thing we need to do now is to add a bit of animated text. Now this is where you get into this amazing Fusion tab, and we need to be on this one really. Right, so when I was doing this before, we had some crashes and things which confused things a little bit, and I never got to properly explain how the Fusion tab works. So here's the Fusion tab at the bottom. When you click on this, so you see I've constructed this this flow. Now when you start, if I go to another one, you start off with a medium in and a medium out. Now all that's happening is this picture represents medium in, it's going straight through to medium out. So it's like a pipeline. Stuff is flowing through. Now what I wanted to do was add a merge node to this, and then I added a text node, and then I connected it up like that. So this input is the background to the merge node, and this input is the foreground to the merge node. So any text you put in here will appear above the background. So you can think of this as like layers. Every time you put a merge node in, you have like this layer above that layer, if you use that in Photoshop. Or you can think of it as like a plumbing where the information is being merged and flowing from one thing to the other before it eventually gets out of there. So I'll just undo that and then go back to this tab. So what we have here is we have the image that's going into the background, we have the text, which is the Chichester at night, that's going into the foreground. And so I can manipulate each of these nodes to do things with keyframes. And okay, so that was what got missed out of the video a little bit earlier, so hopefully that helps. So I want to animate this so that the text actually comes through. So I've got this keyframe thing here, which is called write on. So what I can do is basically start this thing playing. Okay, well, I had a couple of issues there and I had to restart, which is always a pain. So what I want to do now is, I've got my text there, let's just get my Chichester at night. I'm going to position that to where I want it. Save it in case we have any more accidents. So we got this write on effect. So I'm going to create a keyframe there with it completely off. And when it gets to here, about there, sorry, let's go to, I still want it to be off about there, so that's fine. And when we get to about here, I want it to be fully on. Let's go to the edit tab and play it there, see what happens. So when we've got all this done, and we can do all sorts of things in here with color adjustments and sound manipulation. Okay, so now we've got our basic AV together. We need to do the same sort of thing we did before, which is to make everything fit into the frame. So basically put your cursor over the image, make sure it's selected, and then you can basically zoom each one to be how you want it by just dragging your mouse over a number or typing a number in if you know it. And you can move it up and down using these things. So same issue before, we have to basically get them right into the right position. You do have to remember to not only select the slide you want to work on, but also put the cursor in the right place. So this one we zoom quite a lot. I want the healthcare to come in. Same this one. That's the same idea as we have with pictures to XD. It's just you can argue one's better or worse than the other, really, but when you get used to them, they're pretty much the same. And then when we don't zoom. So now we file, save the project. Now we can go over to the Deliver tab, and I've already set up this so that I've browsed to where I want it to go, giving it a file name, filled in all the things I want here. I want it MP4, whatever, and I've got a job here. I'm going to clear that, and I'm going to render it. Which, as before, it's going to take some time. Okay, well it did lie, it didn't take quite that long to do it, only took about a minute and a half. So now that's rendered, we can have a look, see if we can find it. So this is the Resolve version. Okay, so you can achieve pretty much the same in either program. In fact, you can do a lot more in Resolve than you can in Pictures to XC once you get into it, particularly if you're combining videos and things. Now, the only problem is that Resolve is quite demanding on your graphics card. Now, the particular graphics card I've got in here doesn't really work very well with it. The one on my laptop, strangely enough, works better. And although this is free and very powerful, you know, you may find it can be quite tedious if it keeps crashing on you. So I think the thing would be to try it out on your machine. If it's reliable, then you're absolutely fine. If you don't have a good graphics card, then you either have to upgrade your graphics card or you have to use something else, or have a lot of patience. So anyway, I hope that's been interesting again. Cheers.